new normal. But I haven't had a beer yet, so that's after the meeting.
Yeah.
Y'all should all come down and join me.
Not me.
You should.
Councilmember Appel, do you recognize my background screen?
Wow. How did you get that?
Oh, I have my ways.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It's in my district, so I'm within my area.
Wow.
I see you left the name off though.
Somehow I cropped the picture wrong, so it's Appel Vision.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really something. You know, we our family sold out of that last year. So
I know.
I used to
Really?
have. Oh, I mean, if you wanted to get yourself a nice pair of Costa Del Mars, you come see me. When my grandpa had the furniture store, you want a sofa? I mean, now I got nothing. I can bring nothing to the table.
One at all, council member.
That's right.
I got my more Sokol sofa, the last customer. That's
I think you're muted, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, everybody, how y'all doing?
We're good.
great. Thank you.
Good.
I'm so pleased to see we have some special guests with us this evening. General Hank Taylor, who I'll introduce in just a few moments, and Brent Jonas with the CRDA, and John Hagerty and Willis Canny too. Thank you all for being with us today.
Yes.
All right. So, how are we doing on time? We're about there? Oh yeah, all right. It's after 5:30. Y'all ready to get going? I'd like to call this meeting of City Council of Charleston order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilwoman Del Chapo.
Here.
Councilmember Shealy.
Here.
Councilmember Saccharin.
Here.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yeah.
Councilmember Brady.
Present.
Councilmember Gregory.
Here.
Councilmember Waring. Councilmember Seeking.
Here.
Councilmember Shade.
Present.
Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Councilmember Appel.
Here.
Councilwoman Jackson.
Here.
Mayor Tecklenburg.
Here. Thank you. And to open our meeting tonight, Councilmember Saccharin is going to lead us in an invocation. Councilmember Saccharin.
Thank you, Mayor. Can y'all hear me all well?
Yes.
May we who are merely inconvenienced remember those whose lives are at stake. May we who have no risk factors remember those most vulnerable. May we who have the luxury of working from home remember those who must choose between preserving their health and making their rent. May we who have the flexibility to care for our children when schools are closed remember those who have no options. May we who have to cancel our trips remember those that have no safe place to go. May we who are losing our margin money in the tumult of the economic market remember those who have no margin at all. May we who settle in for quarantine at home remember those who have no home. As fear grips our country, let us choose love. During this time, when we may not be able to physically wrap our arms around each other, let us find ways to be the loving embrace of God to our neighbors. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for that appropriate prayer. So normally we start out with a report on the city's response to COVID-19. I'm just going to mention a couple of things, and we're going to move right on to be respectful of the time of our special guests with us this evening. So Shannon will not be making a report. He normally starts with the numbers, but you can all see those in the media. I will just share with everyone that, as you would know and expect, city staff has continued to be hard at work in our response, from everything to setting up serology testing for city employees, which should be able to start in the next day or two. Tracy McKee, I'm going to ask her to make a presentation to you on Friday. She's been really drilling down on the numbers just within our own city limits, and has been meeting with the folks at the medical university to basically mimic their dashboard for statistics about the coronavirus within our own city. And I think you're going to find that very informative. She ought to have that ready for presentation on Friday. And then we're also drilling down, even though I know the city of North Charleston announced today that they were reopening at a date certain, kind of the modus operandi the city's been under, as I view it, is we've continued to be open, but just in a different fashion than we normally were. So we're still conducting all our regular business that needs to be conducted online, on the phone, and otherwise. But we are planning on, the physical reopening of our own city offices and farmers markets and those kinds of things. So the team is now working on those issues as well. So without further ado, and I see 4 guests here who I quickly shouted out their names. General Taylor, are you going to kick off if that's appropriate? So General Hank Taylor is an incredible community volunteer that took on the task of leading a group called One Region that was not put together specifically for this task, although I believe the Lord has called them to rise to this occasion for just this time. Their purpose really was a broad regional purpose with 4 goals in mind. If you don't mind me sharing, General Taylor, with my council, the 4 values or goals of One Region as it was established is to have a strong and resilient economy. And boy, is being resilient what we're all about right now. Number 2 is to have attainable opportunities for all the residents of the Tri-County region, for them to live, learn, and earn a living here. Number 3, to balance growth with nurturing our unique character. As we all know, Charleston and our region has so many unique things we value. We don't want to lose those things as we grow. And lastly, being a connected community. So One Region had all these goals, were up and running and had these goals established. And for them to now step forward and kind of be the regional center of collaboration as we reopen business and get going again, I just think it's a remarkable, it's not a coincidence, a remarkable opportunity for them to step forward and help lead us through this kind of troubling time. So without further ado, General Hank Taylor, I give you the floor, sir, and I thank you for being with us and thank you for your leadership.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you will indulge me, my first few seconds and some personal thanks. I grew up on the east side of Charleston. I graduated from C.A. Brown High School. And so the opportunity to speak to this council is a significant pleasure and honor for me. So if you'll allow me to start with a thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Secondly, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the CRDA represented by Mr. John Haggerty, the Metro Chamber represented by Mr. Willis Canty, and also Brent Jonas, who is also working at the CRDA. I come to you as the chairperson of our executive committee that's been put in place to help us exercise or execute our regional economic development strategy. Now, I'm sure there are many members on this call who are familiar with how our region has always worked together for economical challenges. Going all the way back to when the Navy Yard closed, CRDA was actually formed as a result of that. And so we've been working economic development strategies for over 20 years. As the mayor mentioned, it is fortuitous that the one that we're working now is called One Region. I think it's also fortuitous with the values that's embedded in that strategy based on the circumstances in which we find ourselves. We also have an executive committee made up of nearly 30 people representing nonprofits, business, banks, a cross section of our community already in place. So when Mayor Tecklenburg said, you know, the right place to do this is One Region, all of these stars aligned, and we are certainly the right place to do this. Now, the challenge that we have, though, is not just an economic challenge. We have an economic challenge that's a predicate of a public health challenge. So our efforts must not only be opening business, but opening business safely. So in order to get to that point, we are actively engaged with our medical profession, actually being led by the folks in the medical profession. All of our medical hospital systems are part, Trident, MUSC, as well as Roper. And we're trying to craft a safe way to open business for everybody. So what have we done so far? I will tell you, it's been a fast 2.5 weeks. But so far, we've hired a consultant talent with specific skills in crisis communications. And the reason for that is to make sure we have the right talent so that our messaging and our communications allow us to build confidence and trust for our employers, our employees, as well as our general public. So we've hired them. We also have our website already up and running, oneregionreignite.org, already populated with information. Within the next few days, you're going to see our plan and the major ingredients in that plan to let the public know how we plan to safely open our businesses and get our economy going. Because as you know, commerce only starts when there's confidence among consumers. There must be supply as well as demand. So we've already hired a consulting firm to help us do that. As I mentioned, the first thing we'll put out, and you'll see this by the end of this week, is this plan. Closely connected with that, as a matter of fact, you'll see coming out at the same time our first issuance of industry-specific guidelines. And we're going to start with small businesses, and then we'll do food and beverage, and then we'll work our way through those parts of our economy that impacts us from an economic standpoint. So we often run, and it's been 2.5 weeks, as I mentioned. And we have a cross section of people helping us do that, but we do have 2 foundational supporters, those being the CRDA and the Metro Chamber of Commerce. We're represented on this call today with the chairman of the board for the CRDA, Mr. John Haggerty, and the chairman of the board for the Metro Chamber. So I'll pause right now and give them an opportunity for any comments that they would like to add. And John, why don't we start with you?
Thank you, General. First of all, hello to all my friends on City Council. And for those I know less well, I want to say how much we appreciate all your efforts following the lead of the mayor and all the good work you're doing. I hope you're finding it as interesting as we are on the One Region committee, and gratifying for us, quite frankly. Let me mention a couple of things, and we're glad to answer a lot of questions, and Willis will have a lot more to add as well. This plan we're coming out with will be a living document. It's not going to be a plan that says, yeah, this is it, we're right or wrong. Brent Jonas has worked unbelievable hours with others on gleaning the best from plans all over the country that we've seen. So it'll be a living vehicle. We'll update it as you know, we don't even know today what it really might look like in 30 days. We don't. We think we do, but we do. And so we have to be nimble in that regard. And also I want you to know that we are working hand in hand with Accelerate South Carolina. We're not forging a one region of our 3 counties that's different for any other reason than to give, as the general said, one place where people can look with confidence at getting the good information, the best information we can provide. And then I'll finish with one more statement, which is, it's not going to do us much good to open if we don't have open business, if we don't have business when we open. And so one of our goals here is to not only get open and get open as quickly as we can, but to do it safely so that we have the confidence of the customer and the employee, so we can get back to economic vitality beyond just being open. And so we're looking forward to working with you guys on that. General, shall I turn it over to Willis?
Yes, that'll be when Willis.
Great, thank you, General. And my only request is that next time I go first and John goes second, because he said all the important things. I want to say that in my role as chairman of the chamber, we are trying to think about how we get business back, how we reignite our economy. But this doesn't work, exactly what John said, if we don't do it safely and we don't do it in a way that doesn't inspire confidence. I went to 3 stores today. All of them said that they really are open, but there's no real reason for them to be open because they're not getting people coming in. And that's just a lack of confidence. So what we want to do is help instill that both in business owners and in consumers. I'll end with that, and I'm happy to answer questions.
All right, and we heard from the 3 heads of the organization, but I got to recognize Brent Jonas. I know John Mint shouted out to him a moment ago as to how hard he's been working, but he's really been doing a remarkable effort. He's on the staff of the CRDA, but really had the initial idea of bringing one region in and pulling this together. Brent, you've done a remarkable job. Would you like to address the council as well?
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate your leadership in bringing us the idea to begin with and having the confidence in CRDA from the outset. And it was just a natural extension that we take something that is already in place to utilize the one region platform and really show this market what acting as one region can do. If we can't act as one region to respond to this, which is probably the defining crisis of all of our lifetimes, when can we? So it's been a thrill to pull the different, we have 3 counties, the 5 largest municipalities, and as General Taylor said, close to 30 different folks. And we've been working with the public information officers and staff from all over the 3-county region. Mark Wilbert from your team has been phenomenal, been a great liaison with us and helping us stay in touch with you guys at the city level. And again, I can't second enough what my 3 leaders have said. It's about communication and it's about confidence. And those are our guiding touchstones. And it's about clarity, because as you all know, there are a lot of different messages out there in the public right now. And so our job is to clearly and effectively communicate so our folks and our citizens have confidence in what we're doing. And hopefully on Friday, you'll see something that you'll all be proud of, and we'll continue to build on that as we go forward.
Great.
Hey,
So
Mr. Mayor, Brent, would you show a slide of the other people who are supporting us on this, just to give the council a sense of the cross section of people that's actually helping us to figure this out as we go? So could you show that slide real quick? As you can see, we have a cross section of people supporting us on this, including our governments, our elected officials, volunteer, nonprofit groups, etc. And these are the people that make up the executive committee when we sit down to figure out what's the best approach, what's the best next step. So I wanted to share this with your council as well, so they get a sense of who all are pushing in to help us move this down the road. Thank you, Brett.
Well, thank you again, General Taylor, and all of you I did want council to know that I've asked Councilman Saccharin to officially represent us, the city, on this one region initiative. I'll also wanted to share just kind of the history of what led my feeble brain to think of asking these gentlemen to help lead this effort. But it was some weeks ago, and I'm losing track of time lately. But when it was announced, the College of Charleston did the study of how many jobs had already been lost. And this was like 2 weeks after the initial stay at home. And it was announced that 40,000 jobs in the food and beverage and hospitality industry had already been lost. And that number just stood out in my mind as being similar to what our region experienced in the early 90s, mid 90s, with the loss of the BRAC decision that led to the loss of the Charleston Naval Base. And we lost in one fell swoop 25,000 really good paying jobs when they closed the naval base. And the economic development community of Charleston said, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And they formed the CRDA. The Charleston Regional Development Alliance was formed specifically to respond to that economic calamity that occurred at that time, and to bring everyone together and to bring together a regional focus about what we were going to do in the Tri-County region to rebuild our economy after the loss of the Navy base. And we have the exact similar set of circumstances here now with the fallout from the coronavirus. So many jobs have been lost. We need this regional approach. They were already set up, ready to go, have a staff. As mentioned, Brent and the other folks out there have been remarkable. And then the partnership, the alliance between the chamber and all those groups that General Taylor just showed you on that screen, it really is a terrific platform for us to build confidence, do it safely, and get back in business. And so thank you, y'all, all of you, for your leadership and being here with us today. So with that said, I open the floor to council. Would y'all like to ask any of these gentlemen any questions? Mr. Councilmember Gregory.
First, I'd like to tell you I continue to appreciate your leadership, but I also want to shout out to my church brother, General Taylor, and please tell the wife that Dudley said hello, okay? Appreciate it.
I will definitely do that.
Okay.
And a C.A. Brown graduate to boot.
Proud of that.
And Burke beat you all the time, you know.
Council members, any other comments, questions, thoughts?
Mayor.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. As it often happens, I've got the least history here in Charleston. My husband and I lived in the DC region when you all lost your naval yard. We were coming to Charleston at that point in time, having been working here, as well as hoping that sooner or later we'd be able to end up in Charleston. So I know that it's giving PTSD to so many of you all going through this crisis. I just wanted to make a little comparison today. Councilmember Brady and I were on a call that was focused on Johns Island as a task force that have brought many people together who are trying to prepare Johns Island for a long future as a rural community, as well as one that is right-sized, developed. But the thing that caught my attention at that meeting today was there was a report by the director of Low Country Land Trust, who I see is one of your stakeholder partners, which is great. And she was going on at great length about a collaborative partnership among several other conservation groups, including the Ayers property, that have joined together to apply for a grant from the Donnelly Foundation that looks like it's about to be funded. And she just made such a great point about how it was, everybody was going to take their little piece of the action, do their job, work together. They were really enjoying each other's company in the process of, you know, finding out their common ground and the people that they all work with across the board. And I just, you know, I congratulated them for such an effort. And I said, government needs to learn from that kind of, you know, encouraging. We just don't know the ripple effects that can take place from having people connect on the common ground and then just see what happens as a result. So I do feel like this is anointed. I do feel like this is an amazing opportunity for us to grow in directions that we may not have imagined if we didn't have this crisis joining us together. So thank you for letting me say that.
Thank you. Councilman Jackson, I'd just like to add that in addition to the Low Country Land Trust, we also have the Donnelly Foundation on our executive committee as well.
All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. In general, I'm glad to see it that you have gotten involved in this and been out here for a while. And I'm not a graduate from C.A. Brown. I'm a graduate from Burke, 66 graduate from Burke High School. So, but we have a rivalry, but it went well. But I was mentioning this, Mayor, you know, I was mentioning this a long time ago, that bringing everyone together as a region. From time I went to DC and had this class that they was talking about, you have to have a strong and vibrant community, even though you have a lot of businesses going on. But you always got to make sure that your community is vibrant and strong in case anything should come down, that this community would be able to take over. So we have to also remind ourselves that we have to also make sure that our community is involved in anything that we decide to do, to have that community, because if you don't have the community, you wouldn't need the businesses here. So the communities have to be strong and vibrant, and making sure that happens. And that's one thing I always adamant about, to make sure that we have a strong and vibrant community. So I'm happy to see that we are going to pull together and making sure that we pull together with everyone involved. That means everyone in society, so far as this region is concerned, as black, white, blue, green, whatever the case may be, leaving no one out, because we don't need that part of it, because you have people that was living here all these years, sometimes they feel left out. So we have to make sure that's one thing that we're not doing, is leaving those people out. So those are comments I would like to make, and just to make sure we can go on.
I know that's their goal, absolutely. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate you allowing this team to come forward and present to us. Magnificent talent. I know them all. I remember Brent before he had the distinguished gray in his beard down there. But when we think about our region's billion-dollar problems, I want to go back to prove that this approach has worked. When the shipyard closed, it was a billion-dollar problem for this region. Historically, we would have parochial differences, and we would get in that circle and pull out the guns and start firing, and all we would do was shoot one another. The shipyard recovery from base closure, from the BRAC results, this process worked. When we had a billion-dollar problem in education, when our school board was calling 75 Calhoun Street the Taj Mahal, a lot of us are old enough to remember that. We have now spent over $1.4 billion rebuilding new schools in the region. And of course, the general knows this, John Haggerty knows this. We could not recruit industry in this area because we had no good schools from a structural standpoint, from a physical plant standpoint. When people would come to bring the new cores of the world to this region, they thought they would have to put their kids in private school, so they would have to pay a payroll to the point where you can't put them in public school because we didn't have equivalent structures. Now, over that period of time, we have really done a good job as a region with this leadership, CRDA, Chamber, and the like. to raise over $1.4 billion. I defy you to find a dilapidated school in Charleston County today. That's because they recognize that the future workforce came out of those schools. When we had a $1 billion problem with transportation, it was the same combination that worked. You said, what do you mean? We needed over $600 million to replace the Ravenel Bridge. Well, to build the Ravenel Bridge, to replace the then Cooper River bridges. When we needed the $1.3 billion first half-cent sales tax to be passed, it was the same regional approach that it took to get it done. When we needed the second half-cent sales tax, Mr. Mayor, you participated in very, very big. That was over $2.3 billion that was passed, that we're now in funding. Again, it was this regional approach. When you saw those billboard signs and the commercials and the ads in the newspaper, it wasn't government doing that. It was the private sector pulling together efforts, pushing in one direction to accomplish that. And yes, after this tragedy, frankly, with this, and it's a tragedy in science with this virus, it is $1 billion problem. One city can't do that by itself. Two cities can't do that by themselves. But a region, with this team and leadership, man, I thank you so much for bringing this forth and the experiences on this team. So, General and Brent and my legal scholar and John Haggerty, and of course my colleague Willis Canty, thank you so much. Whatever we can do to help, we all in the same direction with you. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving the platform for them to explain what this does. So it works, believe me. We got the track record to look back on and show that it works. So I look forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councilmember Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really like what I'm hearing today. You know, it's exciting in one sense that we're turning a corner here. We're no longer talking about shutting down businesses. We're talking about how we're going to reopen the economy. That's an exciting period in time. We're not out of the woods yet, but at least I'm sensing a shift in perspective. And, you know, I'm sitting here right now at Revelry Brewing Company on Conroy Street, downtown Charleston. This is a small business that's owned and operated by young guys that are my age, and they've built one heck of a business over the years. That was created due to a deregulatory stance taken at the General Assembly to sort of loosen some of the restrictions on the sale of beer. And I hope that as we move forward, we can take a similar fresh look at some of our laws and some of our regulations to allow not just businesses to be open, but for businesses to thrive. And for the folks that made the comment earlier about the demand side being important in this process, I cannot agree more. It's easy to say businesses are open and we're lifting a government closure order, but it's another thing to get people comfortable and confident enough to frequent these businesses, to actually allow these businesses to thrive. So one of the concerns I heard over the weekend from a lot of small businesses was the lack of clarity. I think there was a lot of questions Friday afternoon about what the loosening restrictions were going to mean. And I think this regional approach to this problem is exactly what the doctor ordered. I'm very excited that we put this together. Thanks to everybody involved. And I look forward to being a part of this process and helping to lead the way towards a stronger than ever recovery. And if we're lucky, perhaps we can position Charleston to be way ahead of the curve regionally and maybe even nationally to attract new business and new opportunities in the coming years. So very exciting time and a lot of good work to come. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you for that good attitude. Anyone else would like to ask a question or make a comment? All right. Could I ask one question of Brent? Brent, I know you're going to unfold the kind of larger plan, and then you're immediately going to start on industry-specific guidelines. As you know, this week we started talking about guidelines for the restaurant and food and beverage industry at the city level. What is your timeline on that industry in terms of putting out some guidance?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So we were fortunate as we mentioned earlier, we're trying to make sure we parallel our actions with the work that's going on at the state level with the governor's Accelerate SC activities. And as you know, a lot of the guidelines for the restaurant industry have already been released by that group. There were some recommendations made, and we're very fortunate that obviously Helen Hill from Explore Charleston is a part of that Accelerate SC team. So we're taking those recommendations that have already been vetted, have already been recommended by the state and local folks that are involved with Accelerate SC, and we're going to package those as a part of our larger initiative. So there won't be anything there that is significantly different from what has already been proposed at the state level, which is why we wanted to go ahead and put those out as a part of our initial release. And then the second piece of that is small business. Willis can tell you, obviously, that the chamber has, I think, 1,700 or so members, many of whom are small businesses, and the discussion there has been lively. Lots of small businesses hurting, lots of small businesses trying to get back, and we're listening to that, and we're trying to respond to that with answers immediately. Interestingly enough, Councilman Appel, you're sitting at Revelry Brewing. That deregulation you talked about occurred because of a project that we didn't win. We were pursuing a brewer a few years back, and that led the state to change those rules that has benefited us all with the growth in that industry. So just to show you, sometimes we don't win the one we're out for, but it turns out okay in the end.
Terrific. But specifically on Friday, you'll be putting out the food and beverage guidelines.
That's correct. Food and beverage and small business, and then the overarching 50,000 foot plan as well.
Right. So my fellow council members, colleagues, that's germane to our discussion later in the agenda that we started Monday. And we can talk about it later in the meeting, but based upon this collaboration with one region, I would respectfully ask that we just delay the city action until Brent and General Taylor are able to put their guidelines out Friday, and we'll kind of be lockstep with them. If we see anything along the way that we need to do that's particular to our city, you know, we'll think about those things and take action on them as appropriate. One thought comes to mind in that regard is that no other jurisdiction has carriage tours and walking tours. And so there's some things we'll have to still consider, so to speak, on our own, that, but there's outdoor dining in Charleston, Mount Pleasant, Isle of Palm, Somerville, all over the place. And so that's just an example of right here out of the box, that to have a regional approach where businesses, no matter what jurisdiction they're in, have kind of the same expectations. It kind of makes it clear for everyone, and hopefully builds that confidence that y'all have been talking about. So anyway, that's just my thinking at this point on how we should proceed as all these different industry sectors come out, that we stay connected and lockstep with the one region efforts. And then if we need to add anything particular, you know, for our situation, that we would do it. The one thing I do recall from one of the guiding principles of the plan that will be released is that it does allow some flexibility for local jurisdictions, you know, if they have a niche or some particular concern that they need to address. Isn't that right? Yeah. All right, Councilmember Seekings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very briefly, Willis, General, Brent, and John, thank you for joining us. I think that the mayor and y'all touched on this a little bit, and I have a question. I mean, we have been taking up the issue of the restaurant business and opening back up and how that looks. Y'all have talked about guidelines. We're a body politic. We deal in regulation rather than guideline, and there's, I think, going to be some inherent tension between those two. And as you all do your work at one region, are you going to sort of talk to that tension between guideline and regulation and places where less regulation will be helpful and places where regulation is needed as we go through and try to be a region, have a regional approach to all this?
Jen, you want me to
Brent,
start
you
on
want me?
that?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, I was just going to say, Mr. Seekings, that, as we deliberate among our leadership team and trying to figure out what is the balance and how do we do things, we came to the conclusion that there are about 3 equities we must pay attention to. One set of equities falls with the medical and our elected officials. Another set of equities fall with our business community. And of course, the third one falls with the general public and the public safety of the public. So we try to balance all of that, respecting all. So there would be a role for our elected officials to play, particularly when it comes to timing and tempo. And so we will respect that. We will align with that. Same thing with state level laws and regulations. We will align with that. And as Brent mentioned, that's one of the reasons why we think it's important that we have representatives both on Accelerate SC as well as on our regional executive committee so that we can strike those alignments. So that's kind of our approach to trying to make sure all of those equities get some consideration of what we're doing. John, you want to add anything to that?
Just council member Seekings, I'll say, but Mike.
Hello,
John.
Right.
Yeah, hey. So you're absolutely right. And we're going to have tension. And we warned, we didn't need to warn the general, but the general understands there's going to be tension. There's no way around that. But so let me be clear about this, though. What one region is going to do is try to be a place where you get information in which you can have confidence. But we're not going to be giving directives. We're not going to be telling people you do this, that, or the other. We're going to tell them, if you want to know the scientific data, that's being overused now, but if you want to know our best efforts to get the information from all these extraordinary sources that we have, MUSC, Roper, Trident, everybody, they're influencing us. We're listening to them. So the role we will play, Mike, is to be that source, but we won't be saying do this or do that.
Gotcha. Sort of putting together a best practices manual in a time when we can't put together best practices because we've never done this before. So good luck.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Councilmember Shade.
Yeah, Mayor, a couple of points. First, are we going to bypass item number 7 on our agenda completely? There is something I wanted to bring up, but I'll wait if we're going to have some discussion on item number 7.
Well, it's just on there for discussion, again, not for action tonight. We're certainly open to talk about it some more.
There's just one point I wanted to bring up, but I'll wait later on into the agenda to do it then. And I just wanted to comment about the other statements that folks have made on this conversation. And emphasize something I think is critically important. Being involved in a family-run business many years ago, the critical part of all this, and I think Councilmember Seekings was trying to allure to this a little bit more, and y'all mentioned this early on. There is confusion. I think a whole lot of confusion on what can or what can we not do, what's permitted, what's not permitted. And I think that has a detrimental impact on businesses. And I think the other part of all this, and this is sort of a huge intangible, but it's a critical part of all this, is trust and confidence, and that I'm going to go someplace in a business setting, being a retail or restaurant or service facility, that I'm safe in. And you can open a door, but if you don't have a mechanism to instill that sort of level of comfort and trust in, I think it's going to be devastating. Best laid plans without that being included is so critical, and I think we were missing the point. So I'm glad to hear y'all have talked about that. Y'all have included that in part of the discussion. And I just want to emphasize that aspect as a major, probably one of the more critical parts of all of this, is the ability for the consumer, for the customer, for the patron for the citizen to feel okay coming back to that establishment. So thank you all for y'all's efforts and y'all's very wonderful discussion about this and your leadership.
Great. So next on our agenda is
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir. Councilmember Gregory.
yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I'm clear that we are going to be correlating, at least have a mutual relationship between the plan and science. And I know that science is all over the place, but I noticed that you do have the medical, university, Roper, et cetera, as part of this. So I'm assuming that they're going to be protecting the science part of all this.
That's correct. Brent is shaking his head in the affirmative.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Cole has directly been a collaborator, a big time collaborator with this effort. Isn't that correct?
Mayor, it is, and not only that, he's on the executive committee of CRDA. He's on Accelerate SC. Boy, he has taken a real leadership role, and by that I mean he has been accessible and works closely with Brent to give him the data that they need.
So no misunderstanding. This is about opening up safely, and that includes having the data that's available now on Medical University's dashboard about assurance that we have testing and contact tracing available in our community. And so all of that is part of the plan. Correct me if I'm wrong, General.
Absolutely correct. When you see the plan on Friday, you will see some direct guidance and guidelines from MUSC as part of that plan as well, and the roles that they're going to play going forward.
And Mayor and Councilman Gregory, I'll add, we've had almost daily discussions with the executive team at MUSC, and the plan itself has been vetted multiple times by different leaders at the different hospitals. I heard you mention Mayor Tracy McKee with the report coming this Friday. She and Mark and I have been in conversations with several of the members of the team over at MUSC, having been on the same email chain even. So what you'll see coming out of our report will be a consistent, clear message regarding those guardrails that the medical community are trying their best to keep us within as we try and open up safely. I can tell you, John and the General and Willis heard from an epidemiologist the other day, kind of explaining how the different pieces and parts will move as the cases change and the amount of testing changes to really help them understand and help them communicate with the community as well. It is truly about how we message this to build confidence to the community.
Great.
I appreciate it.
Well, thank you all again, and I want to be respectful of your time. We're going to continue on with a couple more items. You're welcome to stay, and Brent, if you have time, I think it would be helpful if you could stay on, because next is an update on proposals to assist small businesses in reopening in the city. Meg Thompson has been doing a remarkable job researching on her own and with our other staff, different, and just gathering ideas from y'all and from other community members. And at this point, some of this involves one region as well. So without further ado, I'll like to turn the podium over, so to speak, to Meg Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. This was a great lead-in to what I'm about to share with you all, because what we've been doing in my office is really a product of research and collaboration to identify best practices in order to create a menu of options for you all. None of these is a silver bullet, but the idea is to create things that the city can do to support and supplement these state and regional efforts that you were just hearing about, while being mindful of the same healthcare indicators. So what I'm going to do is share my screen now to show you what we have been looking at. Right. There we are. So when I say healthcare indicators, what you'll see first that'll kind of jump out as is the color. So we have integrated the stoplight plan that was released a little while ago as far as city operations. So right now, as you all know, we're in a red period where we're very socially distant and isolated, hopefully moving into a yellow based on key healthcare indicators, and then finally a green. Other kind of fields to just know in the spreadsheet, and council, I'll be sharing this with you afterwards. I just wanted to make sure you understood how it was laid out before I sent it to you. Looks at a best practice, so what we found, then a proposed action, what a City of Charleston version of that would look like. It also includes the estimated lead time, how much time we think we would need to get something like this up and running, who in the city and who the community partners involved would be, any potential costs, benchmarks, so what other cities are doing similar things, who this would be helping, and then there's some explanatory notes on the side. So that's just to give you an overview of how the spreadsheet is set up as I walk you through this. Now, we did have a much longer list. I have cut it down to kind of the top 13 things that I think are within our capacity to do with safety in mind for the public. So that's kind of how I narrowed down the list of all the different best practices and research proposals that we were provided with. So in this red section, we would start out with a proposal to do kind of a PSA campaign. And this is an idea that came from the US Conference of Mayors about how to educate small businesses about protecting their leases and preventing eviction, how to talk to their landlords, what kind of documentation to put together. So that would be the first example. Number two there is to look at providing PPE supply chains, making sure that if businesses are needing hand sanitizer, gloves, masks, they know where to go to get those. An option would be for the city to provide them. That is something some states and cities are doing. I will point out that there is an existing SC COVID-19 emergency collaborative here that is doing requests and supplies as they're able. Number three would be a local relief fund and increasing banking partnerships. Again, I won't go into detail with this because I know a few proposals have come before City Council already, but this is something that we see other cities doing to various levels of success. Very often they're overwhelmed when they open up applications and aren't able to help as many people as they would like. But a key piece of this would be creating better banking relationships, especially with our minority and women-owned firms. A lot of them didn't have a great relationship with a bank when this happened. So that caused them to be left out of some of the SBA disaster loan programs. Similar vein, something that we could do during this closed down period would be to create a small business advisory board. We do already have a minority and women-owned advisory board that we will convene to get their thoughts, but a broader board would be helpful, and then a more specific board about the food and beverage industry, because they were hit first and will be continued to be impacted as social distancing measures continue. Going down into this yellow portion here, number 5, when we're starting to open up, people are starting to go out more, we would be looking to partner with local anchor institutions to commit to local purchasing. So that's not only asking the community to buy local and support local, but also asking some of our bigger organizations to do their procurement through local options as much as possible. This could be a city challenge, a mayor's challenge, something along those lines. And also this would be an opportunity for us to look at our own procurement policies and metrics and see how we're doing in this effort as well. Number 6 would be to reopen the farmers markets with social distancing. We've seen different models of how to do this around the country. For example, the James Island market over behind the poorhouse actually did drive-through model. Others are doing, you put your orders ahead of time and you just kind of pick up a bundle. So how can we, as this is a lever that we control with our 2 City of Charleston farmers markets, how can we do this safely and get those back up and running? Please feel free to stop me at any time, by the way, for questions. Number 7 would be different ideas to reduce the financial burden relating to parking costs. And this could be for your F&B workers downtown. We used to have a program that assisted them. We could look at reinstating that. We've had preliminary conversations with CARTA about maybe halting the $5 fee to park at the lot for the time being as a way to ease people back into going to work. Different ideas that we could pursue there. Number 8 would be to educate small businesses about disaster preparedness. As you can see over there in the notes section, only about 25% of small businesses have a plan. And again, having a plan is one of those things that makes you prepared for a disaster, and also was kind of key issue in some of these small businesses being able to get these loans, because they didn't have the revenue, profit, loss sheets. They didn't have the documentation that they needed to be able to apply quickly for some of these loans. Now, this last section in green, this is when we are back with the healthcare indicators that indicate that we can be in whatever the new normal is, whatever that ends up looking like. So we would like to look at ways to get people back to work. Like the mayor has mentioned, we had a massive amount of people lose their jobs early on in this. And we want to make sure that not only are people being able to go back to work to maintain their income, but also there are conditions of those small business loans for the people who did receive one from the SBA, that they maintain their workforce and able for those loans to be forgiven. So it's key that they're able to get those numbers back up to where they were previously. The next on the list is something that we've already started doing, kind of what we did with closing Mary Lloyd Boulevard around Hampton Park, creating placemaking opportunities for people to be out in public and social distance. Ways we could introduce economical efforts around that would be increased cleaning and beautification of our central business districts to make people feel safe and comfortable being out there. Maybe loosening up restrictions about food trucks and vending from the street to create more opportunities. Creating social distance signages, templates to make that easier for businesses to comply with any regulations. So that's that piece. Number 11 is helping prepare our large venues for social distancing. And this would be a key one to work with CRDA One Region on. So this is, the music farm, any big special events venue, making sure they have what they need and can clearly communicate with people who may be coming into that space what the expectations are. Number 12 would be to work on our permitting process for commercial approvals. There's a few small, relatively easy lifts that we could do there, such as creating better educational materials about those processes. So people coming in, they've got enough stress, we can give them a document to guide them. We could also work to get a staff position for the fire marshal to be located in the permit center. I put this in a green category because I foresee for the foreseeable future, the fire marshal is going to be dedicated to maintaining occupancy limits. So I didn't want to alter their procedures too much, but it is something that we could work towards and make things move faster and kind of more of a recovery zone. And the last one of these is the ones that I have received probably the most emails about and suggestions and requests if this is something that we're considering, especially since outdoor dining has opened up. This is the idea of using public spaces to increase commercial space. So the idea of closing streets, putting tables and chairs out into metered parking spaces, creating parklets, things like that are something we could consider. We actually, before all of this happened, has started developing a proposal to do an evening closure of Upper King Street, where we know that there is a concentration of restaurants that would be interested in doing something like this. However, this is something that I would not feel comfortable moving forward with until we're told by the healthcare experts that we're safe to do so. So with that, I know that was a lot and very quickly, and like I said, I'll be sharing this with you all, but I did want to open up and see if anyone had any questions for me.
Any questions for Meg? I can't see everybody's picture right now, so just speak up if you don't mind. So,
Mr. Mayor, this is Keith Waring. I
Yes,
do
sir.
have a question. And trying to obviously open back up, have any of us looked at, I guess, a strategy? Now, this is a delicate two-edged sword, but to make it easier for people to park downtown, put some creativity in that, because, obviously you can open up, but you want people to come back. And I don't know that we want to make it hard for them to come back. And I'm just wondering if there's, not today, but if we put some thought in that to try and make it a little bit easier. Actually, maybe I can get Councilman Seeking to jump in on this one. You had made mention of something maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, Councilman Seeking, that about parking, and I had been thinking about that since. But if we're putting together a strategy to come back, how do we make it user friendly for people to come back and enjoy downtown from a parking perspective?
Well,
so good.
Number 7 was ideas about parking. I don't know that she read all the detail there. One of the items was not to enforce parking meters after 6 o'clock.
That's a good one.
And that's just an example. The other examples here were mostly focused on employees, but if we had, you know, we're not getting any revenue now out of the meters or garages, and I guess you could argue we would be foregoing some future revenue by cutting back on enforcement of meters and garages, offering some free parking. But
right.
You know, that's a budget item that council could consider, and frankly, I think it's a good idea, at least for the balance of 2020, that we lighten up a little bit on our parking fees. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's some of the creativity I was looking for. That 6 p.m. is a good one, but you know, let some of my other colleagues hopefully chime in on this. Councilmember Seekings.
Thanks. So Keith, just really quickly, I mean, one of the things, and I know Meg mentioned it very briefly, is, you know, just some creative ways to do it. There's off the books from the city that we can make some opportunities. You know, the hop lot, we can open that up, and we will, and make sure that employees get access. I do think there's some other things that are out there. We probably need to be talking to some of the private side too, just to get people back into the city and parking, just reduce parking fees in some of the private lots. I think we can talk to people about that too, because it's going to be a while before you get sort of critical mass on parking downtown. I mean, I know you all probably don't come as often. I'm here every day. There is 0 parking going on the streets right now. So you've got retail opening up, no parking. I think we're going to not only have to make it easier to park, but publicize through Meg's office and others that there are, you know, some loosened restrictions and available parking all over the city. And it's going to be a big balance, because, you know, it's a huge part of our balance sheet at the end is the revenues from parking. But
Right.
There's some things we can do that won't crush us, that will get things going again for sure.
All right. Anyone else?
Hey, Mr. Mayor, this is Jason.
Yes, sir.
I apologize for the noise in the background. My son is here. So just want to say, Meg, great job on getting this list together. I know it was calling a bunch of folks that had provided input. So thank you for getting it done. There's several things on this that I think are worthy of considering. And just to echo, you know, Councilman Waring's point, you know, thinking creatively, especially about the parking and the idea of parklets. We talked about that a little bit. But I think this is a great start, and I know it was a lot of work. So thank you, Meg.
Thank you.
So she will send this list out to everybody, and would y'all please take the time to review them and maybe do a ranking or some feedback to Meg as to what you think the most beneficial or higher priority is, because we can do a lot, but we can't do it all at one time. And if 1, 2, and 3 are more important than 9, 11, and 13, would, you know, want to do it that way. So take the list and please give Meg some feedback, and we can talk about it again next Tuesday at our regular council meeting, if that's suitable to everybody.
Mayor.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. Just a little bit of humor. I think you better be buying Meg a flak jacket, because we're all going to have some really good suggestions for her to continue to massage. So great effort. I really appreciate having words on paper for us to chew on. So sorry in advance, Meg. You're going to have to work overtime.
Bring it on, Councilmember.
You know I do.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, I have a logistical question. This is Councilmember Brady. And Meg, maybe you can chime in as well on the closing the street, like on King Street. I know we only own a small portion of that, and was wondering, you know, how the state would respond, since part of King or most of King Street is their road. If we were going to block that off, because I am very much in favor of it. I was actually having a discussion today about it. If you've ever been to Denver and seen the 16th Street Mall, there's outdoor spaces. They kind of close it off. It's more bike and pedestrian friendly. And we could do that on the portion of King Street we own, which I think is Calhoun to Mary. But I could be wrong on that. But that would be a great way. There's plenty of restaurants there. And it would give, since in times where normal, people scatter across King Street anyway without responding to the crosswalk signals. And it would just give everybody kind of a safe space to move about the street, as well as provide for outdoor dining as well.
I don't know if Keith Benjamin is still on the call, but he did make, when we were talking about putting this list together, I ran the idea by him, and he did make a preliminary request to SCDOT and sounded favorable. Keith, do you want to share any more information about that?
Hey everybody, Keith here. Thanks, Meg. You've been doing some amazing work on this, and thanks for taking my early morning calls too. So we did make an outreach to SCDOT District 6 Administrator Tim Henderson, who then on our behalf spoke to Leland Colin, the Deputy Secretary, and others in Columbia regarding these concepts. They did make it clear to us some of their trepidation of making sure, proper traffic control. And, if you look at other cities have introduced parklets or closures, there's very heavy specifics around design, liabilities, and otherwise. But they did let us know that a request from the municipality would be treated the same as their engineering guidelines that are used for parades or festivals or otherwise, which is extremely encouraging about what their support of some ideas that are allowing small businesses to be able to thrive. Now, do realize that those permits that they allow for those type of closures are for temporary situations and not permanent. So it is still at their discretion as to what they do and don't approve, but it was encouraging that instead of just a complete no, that these requests would be viewed in the same way a parade or a festival or other type of street closure would be viewed.
Well, thank you all for being proactive on that. Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yeah, I thought about that same thing in closing as what they do on second Sundays. But I said, even if that's done, when you're coming from that area, leaving that area and coming further down Cannon Street to King, to even Mary Street, the community gonna have to really know about this big time, because in that area, I think Mr. Mayor, on both sides of that street, Racklebarrow, Ellerbarrow, Cannonbarrow, Zeke Ragsborough, whatever the case may be, they're gonna really have to be knowing to buy into it so we wouldn't have any problems. Because they'll probably throw a wrench in it big time.
Well,
So,
and I'll share with y'all a text message I got the other day. Hi, John, just heard a rumor to close King Street and put tables out on the street. Bad idea. It will kill retail. So there's always another perspective whenever we propose to do something. So we'll put some thought into it. I think we need to be very strategic about it, and consider exactly where, if we're doing this for the food and beverage, restaurants, to really, tighten it so that it's strategic to certain blocks or even certain spaces of the street in front of a restaurant. We don't want other normal retailers who have been closed also for the last month and not gaining any income. We don't want to hurt them. So it will take some thoughtfulness and some surgical precision, maybe.
yes, that's what I was saying, Mr. Mayor, because I threw it out there around the community. So I thought about it myself in doing that, and I said, act the same way as the second Sunday that we closed from Calhoun Street all the way down on King. And if you come further up a King, it's a little different because you got to look at the traffic pattern and everything, how they're going to get around in areas and how they have to move. and when you have the communities up in those particular areas, and you want to get in the fight with them that much, so you have to make sure that they understand it, how we're going to do it, if it's going to be done, if it could be done, and how the traffic's going to move also too.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While you all were, well, Councilman Brady brought this up, I actually went on my desktop and pulled that up. But a lot of examples I'm seeing is it being done where parking would be, would have been, and traffic is allowed to flow in many of the cases. So with that, Mr. Benjamin, if hypothetically the permit were for the parking area and you still had traffic flow, is that still looked upon as being in the same light of a parade?
It is something that we still would have to have permitted by SCDOT, obviously, because it's the right of way. When you look at the best practices, we're a NACDO city, National Association of City Transportation Officials. There's a number of cities that have implemented parklets, but they have, to Councilmember Mitchell's point, significant regulations about community buy-in, maintenance and liability, certain design criteria where it can withstand particular issues, like for example in San Francisco, it has to sustain 200 feet of impact in order to have their certain materials in their parklet space. So there are also public spaces, or most places that introduce parklets. So it's not, hey, this is your business's area, right? It's something that is accessible to everybody too. So that's why, Meg was very astute in saying that, something like a parklet or even something as big as a street closure, would be a heavy lift. For our city, it would probably involve at least 5 different city departments being together to coordinate on that. So it's not necessarily outside of the impossible of getting done. It just means it's all hands on deck to make it work. And the proposal that I got to give a shout out to Civic Design Center had started to look at with King Street, looked at various different functionalities that some of which would still allow certain arteries that are east to west to still be able to have vehicular traffic go through, but for those certain blocks be closed off. So there's ideas that are out there that could be implemented. Again, this is something that want to be careful about all the health restrictions and otherwise, and make sure this is something that is feasible. We have the capacity to do, and it's something that's sustainable. So,
thank you, Mr. Benjamin.
Keith Benjamin, it's not a term I was really in my normal vocabulary. Would you define parklet in this context?
So the concept of parklets comes really from the thought process of welcoming people to space, welcoming people to the public right-of-way in a way that's safe. Just as we make designations for all other types of modes of transportation, how do you also make space for pedestrians? And so the idea is that in already designated parking spaces, right, being able to create destinations for people to sit, in our case, social distance, to be able to eat, to be able to exchange and otherwise, for extending the length of the sidewalk out into the right of way, but just specifically in the parking areas. And so it allows some interesting design. It allows some ways for people to be able to interact in a different way while also making sure the walkway is open. So it's extending the sidewalk. And I think part of the reason why it's become something that's been attractive in some cities implementing in the short term. Tampa just announced it a couple of days ago for their city, is because you give more space for social distancing. It's just, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of moving parts that go into making those real. And for us here in Charleston, that includes coordination between us as a city and also the state DOT.
Right. Thank you very much. All right. Any other questions or comments regarding Meg's presentation? If not, we'll send that out to you, ask for your feedback, and we'll talk about it again on Tuesday. And then lastly, we had on the agenda to continue discussion on the emergency ordinance about promoting safety in restaurants. As I mentioned earlier, I would respectfully, I welcome anybody's comments. I don't want to take any action on this tonight. I would like to wait and see the plan that I think will be very similar to this, but I still want to be respectful and give one region the opportunity to come forth Friday with their plans. And then I guess if you think about it, it really kind of ties into Councilmember Seeking's questions. Even if we adopted exactly word for word what one region was recommending as the guidelines, do we just leave it as guidelines, or do we take that extra step, again, even if it was word for word, and create an ordinance out of it so that it adds some enforceability? So that seems to me to be kind of a key question going forward. Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mayor. And one little point I wanted to bring up for everyone's consideration. I took a little walk around King and Meeting Street this afternoon and noticed a handful of establishments serving outdoor dining, and they're serving alcohol on the sidewalk. So I called the chief and talked to Steve Rumlin on this, and I'm not sure if this is something we want to do or to consider doing, but unless you've got a special permit, you cannot serve alcohol on the city sidewalk. And as Steve mentioned to me, outdoor dining on certain sidewalks is dependent upon the size of the sidewalk and other factors that may be taken into consideration. I bring this up to everybody's attention because it may cause an unintended consequence on the outdoor dining, because the statute does talk about sidewalks being extended as part of outdoor dining. And remember that we had just passed that ordinance dealing with folks who were standing and stopping on sidewalks in this particular area bounded through Market Street. So this may be a conflict of ordinances and state and city regulations dealing with the service of alcohol and on a public right of way. And it also may infringe on our other ordinance that we just passed regarding people moving along sidewalks. As we go through this process, I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. Those who are listening, I see Brent still with us, but Ed Meg is still with us as well. That's just a consideration. It's a small thing, but it may be an important thing as to, we're talking about the flow of traffic, we're talking about serving alcohol, which would otherwise be prohibited. That's just something I think we need to take into consideration.
All right, I heard that. And I think Mount Pleasant already addressed that in an ordinance they passed yesterday that basically allowed some flexibility for allowing that service to occur during this period. And let me just add, I don't think it's going to be an awful long time before the governor opens up in-house or in-restaurant service. So, and the weather getting hot and you're able to serve inside, I think this issue won't last very long personally, but we'll see. Councilmember Appel, did you want to be recognized?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just real briefly, Meg, great job with putting this all together. And I wanted to give a shout out to the effort to hold a restaurant, bar / brewery forum on Zoom. I think that's a great opportunity for us to hear from the folks that are not on the call right now, but they're some of the most important people in this conversation, other than, of course, Councilmember Saccharin, who has a unique perspective on this. Because there's a lot of practicalities on the very granular level. I think Councilmember Shahid just referenced a lot of the some of the red tape issues that we got to deal with, and I think that for us to get a full 360 perspective here, we need to hear from the actual small businesses themselves, and I'm excited that we're having that opportunity in the near future. So thank you.
So y'all recommended that Monday, and Meg is setting that up. And if you have a particular restaurant owner you would like included, please let Meg know so that she can reach out to them and include them on the call.
As soon as possible. That's scheduled for 9:30 tomorrow morning.
Let her know after the meeting. Councilmember Seekings.
Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor, because I know we're all ready to go and have some dinner. Meg, thank you for setting up that meeting tomorrow. There are a good number of people that are going to participate. I think you'll get a chance to probably do it again. Mr. Mayor, I think this issue that Councilmember Shade brought up is something we just need to keep in our minds, because even if the governor opens up and we as a city look at these regulations and open up indoor dining, one of the things I think we know for sure is that there will be some limitations on that indoor dining, one of which will be population. It'll be some fraction of what you're already allowed to put in per the fire code, whatever you're permitted for, right? Whatever you're licensed for. And some form of outdoor dining will be a way for us to allow restaurants to make up that delta between what they otherwise would have inside and outside. So I think it's something we're gonna have to keep in our mind. I don't think it's just gonna go away like that, because indoor dining is gonna be allowed, because it'll be so limited in number that there probably will be some creative things we can do. And to Councilmember Shade's point, it's a state law, nothing that we can do here at the city level on alcohol. That's just banned by the state outdoors. Beer and wine we can allow. So just something to think about as we go forward. Mayor, just one question in your mind. Is this something we're going to take up on Friday, or can we go over the weekend after we've heard from what one region has to say, talk to the constituency out there rather than take it right up on the wake of when we hear from one region?
Well, to be honest with you, other than Tracy's report, which could be done next week, I'm not averse to suggesting we not have the meeting.
So moved.
And just
I'll second.
Is that okay?
Great.
No offense taken.
What's that, Tracy?
No offense taken.
No offense. Oh, okay, I didn't want to hurt your feelings. I've forgotten you might be on the call. All right.
Is that in regards to Friday?
Yeah.
So let's just do that. We'll give Brent the chance to get the plan out. We'll have some time to absorb it. We'll get it to everybody on council as soon as Brent puts it out, and then we'll consider this an addendum already to Tuesday's meeting, that we will have the report from Tracy and further discussion of your priorities for Meg's 13-point plan, and then a further discussion on this restaurant ordinance. Does that sound suitable?
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else to come before us tonight?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Griffin.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to take an opportunity to really just say that I know we've talked a lot about, getting through the red tape and what we need to do to be successful with these restaurants open back up. But I really want to give kudos to a few restaurants that I've seen operating so far. I've had the opportunity to work throughout all of this, and I got to go and eat at a restaurant, sit outside yesterday afternoon, and was very, very impressed with the measures that they were taking. All the tables were 8 foot apart. All the staff are wearing gloves, masks, hand sanitizer stations everywhere. I really have to say that I believe our city restaurants, number one, the creativity of being able to finally open back up and be able to serve a decent number of people, the creativity of how they've been able to use their parking lot. And it's really an atmosphere that I've never seen before, because you're used to driving by a restaurant and there's people inside, but you can't see them all joining together and having a good time. But with all of these restaurants outside, I love seeing the creativity, as long as they're following the guidelines, but seeing everybody having a good time. And you can tell that people are just very excited to be able to be with their families again and experience that. One thing that I got a call from one of the owners at Uptown Social. They started serving up on their rooftop. They put all of their guidelines on their website and have made it very clear to their patrons exactly what to expect. And they've gone above and beyond what the governor has even said, and are very in tune in the ideas that we're looking at. But I've got to say that our restaurant, our food and bev community, they took a really hard hit from all of this, but just to see how they've been able to rebound just in a couple of days and not only be respectful of what we're trying to do to keep everybody safe, but be able to finally have a sense of normalcy. I know that we're going to be able to get past this just because of that these last few days. I know that not everything's perfect yet. And, you know, we've got some situations that may look a little, you know, abnormal or things that we don't necessarily want to see. I mean, we would hate for King Street to turn into Bourbon Street. However, you know, we have to you know, help commerce happen. And I know that we're doing that. And I'm just thankful that, you know, we're seeing a little bit of some normalcy again. And I'm really, really proud of our food and bev community because they got hit with a gut punch when this thing first started. And the way that they've been able to sustain, band together, and now follow our guidelines, but still find a sense of normalcy, I know we're going to be okay. I just wanted to say that. And I thank you for all your guidance and support and these Zoom meetings and making sure everybody understands what the expectation is going to be. This is the smartest thing. I mean, we're being transparent and we're above, ahead of the 8 ball a little bit. We know that the governor is going to continue to open business back up. If we can have these meetings and give people an idea of what to expect, it's going to make it so much easier for us when the governor has his orders. So kudos to everybody involved and just looking forward to working with everybody to get a sense of normalcy back again.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Griffin and Councilmember Waring.
Yeah, just one last comment. I want to make sure to remind Councilman Shayade to make sure to go get his vision checked.
I second that.
And it says, you know, a pale vision, so you got sort of cut off. I will make sure everybody gets equal time with my backgrounds.
Where did that one come from? I mean, come on.
Yeah. I got one for you, Mayor. Yours is coming.
All right.
Okay.
Well, anything else for the good of the order?
Good meeting. Good meeting.
If not, we will see you next Tuesday, if not sooner. Thanks for all that everyone is doing. And yeah, it might be time to go out and patronize one of these outdoor dining.
Well, I'll be having some beer. I'll be having some beers over at Revelry if anyone wants to come join me.
Do they have an outdoor serving area there? Just kidding. All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I just hope that we'll all remember Councilman Saccharin's prayer. I thought it was so appropriate. Thanks a lot, Councilman.
All right.
God bless y'all. Thanks.
Stay safe.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Appreciate it, y'all.